Hello everyone, my name is Praveen and I welcome you all again to my YouTube channel Java Fun. Today we're going to talk about microservices and one of the most important aspect within the microservices architecture is the fault tolerance. So microservices architecture to implement is not quite simple, right? It is hard. You need to think about so many things which can go wrong, and when you have a proliferation of different microservices within your architecture, it invariably something or the other things will go down. uh, yeah, something or the other will not respond in time. So in such scenarios I want to think about how you're gonna handle such failures, and is there any libraries or the out of the box solutions available to facilitate those kind of requirements. So today we will check one of the library called as Resilience 4J, which I would say an offshoot of Hystrix. So if you are coming from or if you're working on a microservice architecture from a long time, you must have known that Netflix comes with the fault tolerant architecture, and one of their very famous library was Hystrix. Um, and Resilience 4J is basically following the same philosophy. As and when we progress through the this particular lecture, we'll come to know how Resilience 4J is different from Hystrix and in which scenarios we should be using it. So the very important question that come to mind is what exactly is the fault tolerance, right? So in a microservices architecture, fault tolerance is a property, or I would say is a desirable quality of your microservice architecture to make sure that in the event of failures, the service keeps on working without interruption. Which means that, in other words, your service should be able to gracefully handle the failures of any of the component which needed for its smooth functioning. And that components can be anything. That component may be your network going down, your blip in the network, your database goes down, database gets choked, or you are out of resources, or even some of the hardware failures. So whatever may be the failure scenario, can your service gracefully handle those kind of failures, right? Those kind of abnormal situations which is coming in a normal processing of your business functionalities. If your service is resilient enough, in other words it is fault tolerant, we can say that your microservice architecture is a fault tolerant architecture. So there are certain design choices that you need to make, certain code changes that you need to do to make your service fault tolerant. Okay, so I told you what exactly is a fault tolerance. So what are the different types of fault tolerance which is there, right? So what do we consider as a fault in a microservices functioning, right? So, and depending upon the type, you have different types of fault tolerance to handle that particular failure. So first thing is a circuit breaker. Now this particular terminology may sounds like some of the electrical switches and some electrical terminologies, right? So it is kind of similar. So if you see, if you are coming from electrical engineering or some electrical background, you know that the electrical switches may trip whenever there is a load, uh, more load in your electrical wiring, right? To prevent catastrophic failure into electrical wiring. So circuit breakers in microservices architecture is something similar, wherein you are basically, whenever the downstream systems or downstream components not functioning properly, you basically trip that particular connection or that particular functionality, so that you don't put any more load onto the downstream system, and you invoke a fallback mechanism, assuming that your fallback is not really working. And we'll go through example of what exactly I mean by that, so it will be more clearer. So what is the another type of fault tolerance? You have a time limiter. if you have a very strict SLAs in place, wherein your certain functionalities has to work in a particular time, there the time limiter comes into picture. So if it is not adhering to the SLAs, you need to look for some alternative solutions. So in this case, time limiter comes into picture. Bulkhead. Bulkhead is nothing but you want to know that what is the concurrent functionalities, how many concurrent actions can happen for a particular type or for a particular call, right? So that is determined by the bulkhead. If it is going beyond that, you put some restriction on top of it so that you don't overwhelm the other resources which you are utilizing. Rate limiter, basically at any given point of time, what is the rate or threshold by which you are making calls to your downstream resources or downstream services. Then the last one is retry, very important one. It may be possible that certain cases you may have blip in certain functionalities at that point of time, rather than completely failing that particular transaction or that particular call. You may wait for some time, few milliseconds, few seconds, and then retry that functionality again, because rerunning or the replaying the entire thing, which may be more costlier. So what you can do is you can put a retry on the method which can go wrong, and if it fails, you wait for a certain time and then retry it again. So you have all the context or stack entries of that particular call, and you resume from that particular scenario again. So this essentially needs that your services has to be idempotent, as in if you retry it again, service logic should be able to handle that replaying of the events or the rerunning of the functionality. um, so as part of this particular lecture, we will only go through a circuit breaker pattern first, and then I'll be creating a more videos to explain what are the other fault tolerant mechanism which is there. So in this particular series, I'll be creating the video for each and every one of the fault tolerance technique which is there. So stay tuned and follow the entire series and go through the entire series of it. So if you're coming to my channel for the first time, I would like to clarify this thing that I generally covers each and every topic in very detail. So it may seem like it is a little bit slow, but I try to cover all the topics in depth. So please stay tuned and stay till the very end. I don't really create only hello world kind of application or the POCs. I try to go through the concept in detail. So having said that, what exactly is the Resilience 4J? So Resilience 4J, as I told you, is nothing but a library to implement the fault tolerant architectures in microservices. So this particular library is lightweight compared to Hystrix and other libraries available in the market. Why it is lightweight? Because it doesn't have any of the external dependencies. So if I take an example of Netflix Hystrix, it has a dependency on the Apache Commons, Apache Langs. It has a dependency on the Archeos. So Resilience 4J is written in pure Java and doesn't have any of the external dependencies. So it doesn't bring any of the overload with it when you put it in your class path. So that's one of the main advantage. It's quite lightweight, no external dependencies, and it has been built using Java 8, unlike Hystrix, and which is incorporating all the functional programming concepts into it. So internally with Resilience 4J, it is having just one dependency, which is VAVR, which is nothing but a functional programming library for Java, and it utilizes it to give a completely functional flavor when you try to code it using the Resilience 4J classes or the methods, right? So if you're a functional programming fan, this is a library for you. So Resilience 4G is there, but what are the other libraries which is available in the market which is providing the similar kind of functionalities, and what may be some of the disadvantages of those libraries for which we need to consider the Resilience 4G, right? So as I told you earlier, Resilience 4G is definitely there. Then there is a Sentinel library from Alibaba, and you have a Hystrix from Netflix. As I told you, some of the disadvantages of Hystrix. Um, Hystrix only provide you the circuit breaker functionality. So the other things like rate limiter, time limiter, bulkhead, retries, all those things are not provided by Hystrix. So from that perspective, Resilience 4G is more complete library. So this should be a recommended approach. If you're on Kubernetes or something, it provides an Istio, which is a more of a service mesh kind of a concept, but that is handling the resiliency from outside. You cannot really run the library within your JVM and then handle the fault tolerance. So it's a completely different terminology altogether. Okay, so we gone through the concept of what exactly is the fault tolerance. Now we're going to look at the first fault tolerance technique, which is a circuit breaker. So what do we mean by circuit breaker? So uh, as I told you, I give an analogy of an electrical switch, right? So uh, you need to basically trip your connection or create some kind of a proxy, so that if your remote calls or if the call to other functionality is failing, and it has reached certain threshold, so what you do is you no longer allow any new calls going to that particular method or a functionality. One of the reason for that is executing that particular call may be a costlier thing to do, right? And you may be putting a lot more stress onto your infrastructure. So one of the most important thing is, suppose you have two microservices, microservice A and microservice B, and for some reason microservice B goes down. Now you're getting those failures. There is no reason to keep on making the multiple calls to microservice B, because your it's going to fail anyways. So you need to give some time for microservice B to basically recover from that kind of a failure. Now let's see, where do we need a circuit breaker kind of pattern, or why do we need it? So let's see an example of a service wherein you have a client, as in of any microservice, and you have a supplier wherein you are making a connection and getting some data from the other service, and in between lies the circuit breaker. Now if you don't have this particular pattern, what will happen? So for that I'll move on to another diagram. So in this particular scenario, service A is a client service, service B is a supplier service. Now service A is making calls to service B, and now you have multiple instances of service B and service A, so they are basically internally getting load balanced. So whenever you make a call, it opens an HTTP thread, make a call to service B, and so on and so forth, right? So the arrows that you're seeing is basically threads which are getting opened from service A to service B. So till the time service B responds, this thread will remain active. Now if you worked on the Spring Boot, you know that the Spring Boot threads are limited, and please pause this video as of now and go on to the comment side and reply what is the default number of threads which has been available uh, when you start your service with Spring Boot, and how you can configure it to a different number altogether. So pause it uh, and put your answer into it. Okay, so now as you told you, these threads are limited. So for some reason, if your service is not responding properly, or it is giving a delayed response, right? What will happen? So for service A, there are calls coming continuously. Service A making call to service B, and the service B is taking a long time to respond back. So your threads are occupied now. Now once your thread started occupying, the ability of service A to entertain new requests get reduced as the time progresses, and you will have one scenario, or it will have one threshold breaking point wherein service A can no longer accept the new requests. It may also be possible that you have a cascading failure because of the service B. Service A gets overloaded. It will have memory problems, it will have resource constraints, and it may be possible that service A goes down. So the in your entire architecture fault lied somewhere else, but the fault basically now cascading up into the chain, and it is having ripple effects on the other services as well. So this is a classic example wherein you need a fault tolerant architecture. Now this is where we say that the service B is basically getting delayed. What if service B goes down completely? So if you have a service B has a dependency on database where it gets some data from database and return it back. So in this particular scenario, your database may go down or your service may go down because of some reason. Now even if you have multiple services in place, suppose some of the instances of service being goes down, all the load because of the load balancing will get shifted to a healthy instance of service B. But since it gets overwhelmed with the number of requests which has been coming in, it will it basically its ability to respond in time and effectively will get reduced, and it will start propagating the errors up into the call hierarchy. So how do we introduce a circuit breaker in this particular scenario, and how we can guard against it? Okay, so let's go back to the circuit breaker and then see how we can do that. So again, the same thing, you have a client, you have a supplier, and in between we introduce a circuit breaker. Now what will happen is that client will make a call to supplier via circuit breaker, and supplier will return back. Now you may have connection problem, or you may have a delay in the response. So the requests are getting timed out. Right? The requests are getting timed out. So at one particular thing, circuit breaker decides that the number of failures has been reached above the configured threshold. So if I say that within the 60 seconds I can only tolerate 4 requests going down, if it is more than 4 failures, it means something is not working properly on the supplier side. So in that particular scenario, you invoke my fallback mechanism, or you do no longer make a call to a supplier. So in that case, the circuit breaker trips, and once it trips, it no longer makes a call to a supplier. So circuit breaker will invoke a fallback mechanism, and it will return back the response right then and there. So now you isolated yourself from the failure happening at the supplier side. So you are basically gracefully failing, or if not that case, it's not really failing, you are giving him a alternate solution basically in this particular problem. So this is where your circuit breaker concepts come into picture. Now we will see how this circuit breaker has been implemented in Resilience 4J. Okay, so circuit breaker in Resilience 4J has been implemented using a state machine. So if you're from a computer science background, you should know what exactly is a state machine. State machine in which your entity will have a particular states, and it will move from one state to another state based on certain events. So in case of circuit breaker, it has basically 3 states: open, closed, and half open. So when the circuit breaker is closed, which means that it is in a healthy state. It is not really invoking a fallback for you. It is passing through the circuit breaker and calling the supplier service, or the service B in our case. So whenever the failure rate is above a threshold, it trips and it opens the circuit breaker. Once the circuit breaker is opened, no longer new calls will be allowed to a supplier or a service B in our particular example, and it will give some time for service B to come up or to recover from a failure, so which is again a configurable time. So I say that once the circuit breaker opens, you should not allow new calls for, let's say, 1 minute. So for next 1 minute, no new calls will be allowed to service B. After 1 minute, it will not allow all the calls directly to service B. What it will do, it will move from open to half open state. In half open state, you again basically decide how many calls you need to allow in a half open state. So let's say I should allow like 3 calls in a half open state, and if all the 3 calls has been successful, or percentage of those 3 calls are successful, then you consider that the supplier service is in a healthy state, and then you close the circuit breaker. So this is how circuit breaker pattern has been implemented in Resilience 4J. So now, as we have seen that to open or close circuit breaker, library, the Resilience 4J library has to record the result or state of the response which has been happening from a supplier. So whether that call is successful or not, this has been implemented using a ring bit buffer. So ring bit buffer is nothing but a circular array, you can say, wherein you are maintaining a bit value. So bit, it may have a one value or a zero value. Zero signifies the successful uh, invoking of your method or a remote call, and one signifies the failure scenario. So in case of Resilience 4J, you have two different kinds of circuit breaker types. You may have a count based type, or you may have a time based type, which means that if I say it count based, in this particular scenario, it will record the outcomes of the last n number of calls, which is configurable, right? So let's say for last 10 calls, I say I can tolerate the 50% of the calls going down. So I can say that 6 calls may go down. The moment I have a seventh failure, i can I can basically open the circuit breaker. So for that, I need to start recording these particular responses of my calls, and it will continuously basically aggregating these results for every call. And moment it says that threshold, the failure has been exceeding the threshold, it will trip. Similarly, in the case of time based scenarios. Okay, so that bring us to the end of what exactly is a fault tolerant pattern in microservices, what exactly is a circuit breaker. In the next lecture, we will see how we can implement um, this particular thing using the Resilience 4J library. So stay tuned. If you have come till the very end and if you liked it, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon. A lot of effort goes on to making or preparing for these particular videos. So uh, any comments from your side, likes onto the videos, it's very very encouraging for a new YouTuber like me. So please leave your comments if you like the narration style, if you like the content that I'm bringing. Go through the other series which has been created, and go ahead and subscribe it. See you on to the next lecture, uh, where will we see how exactly you can implement Resilience 4J circuit breaker pattern in Java code. Thanks for tuning in.